haven't heard that before. Just turned on the video. So you can, we'll go through Colossians 1 together. We'll see how far we get and just continue to practice looking for those connector words, because when we start Unit 3 in a couple of weeks, we'll really be focusing at the beginning on the diagramming, so that that'll help show us again the structure of the passage as we discussed. So this is a very important step or part of studying epistles, and we will also use it when we look at poetry and prophecy, and then a little bit when we do narrative. Narratives has some differences, so diagramming is not as significant there unless you're looking at some teaching passages. Then it's very helpful. But for epistles, it's definitely a key step in studying an epistle, and so that's why we're spending a lot of time on doing this. And hopefully it's helping your English a little bit along the way as well, just for doing this together. So what I've done is basically tonight, I combined several of the assignments together, because the early assignments, I just gave you a piece, like look for conjunctions, one assignment in Colossians 1. Another assignment was look for prepositions in Colossians 1. Another one was look for the relative pronouns and participles. And so basically I'm going to, tonight we'll just do essentially combine all of those assignments together, because we're going to look for all the connector words with each other. So what I'd like to do is, let me pull up the class notes here. And let's see, is that the right one? No. This one? Sorry about that. There we go. All right, there we go. All right, so what I want to do is just have us walk through this together. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to let me know. And we'll cover as much as we can of Colossians 1 together. I think I also assigned you, the last assignment was to do this for Colossians 2. So hopefully by going through this in Colossians 1, you can be able to do the assignment for Colossians 2. And as I mentioned to you last week, that really the best way to learn this is to practice and to just continue to go through passages and do this, because with practice you'll get more understanding of it. All right. And so also too, when you complete the assignment, I'll send you my completed my answers for that assignment, so you'll have that as a reference as well. Okay. So just to remind us, this is the connector words exercise we're going to do together. And like I said, it's combining these 3 assignments together in one. So you're getting a whole 3 assignments for the price of 1. In this assignment, we're going to look for each connector word. There's, remember, 4 main connector words: the conjunctions, the prepositions, relative pronouns, and participles. And I put here as a reference, if you remember the following most common connector words. All right, and we've been talking about these acronyms all through Unit 2. And so my encouragement to you has been to memorize these. And what you are going to find is very often, if you can remember these connector words, you're going to capture 80 or 90% of them in the passage, because these are very common. All right, so what I'm going to do is leave these up here, but what I want you to do is identify each connector word. So we're just going to go through a verse at a time. I'll give you guys a minute to look at the verse, and then have one of you just identify the connector words that you see, and we'll note them by these different abbreviations. So a conjunction, I'll put a CO over it. A preposition, I'll put a PR above it. Relative pronoun, RP. And the participle, I'll put PA. And then I'll also highlight it just to make it clear. So I did this for the first couple of verses just to give you an idea of the example. And let me split the screen here to do this. All right, so I'm going to keep those. Okay. All right, hopefully this will work. I'll keep these up at the top of your screen so you can have reference to them as we go through together. All right. So I gave you an example for the first couple of verses where I highlighted the prepositions and the conjunctions, the relative pronouns, and the we don't have any participles in this first. But notice I just put above each of them the corresponding abbreviation. All right. So Paul, an apostle of, preposition, Jesus Christ, by, preposition, the will of God, of, preposition, and conjunction, Timothy, our brother, to, preposition, the saints, conjunction, and conjunction, faithful brethren, in, preposition, Christ, who, relative pronoun, are at, preposition, Colossae. Grace to, preposition, you, and conjunction, peace from, preposition, God our Father. All right. So that's all we're doing here is we're just identifying those connector words that you see. All right. Of all the 4 different kinds that we've been studying together. All right. So today's going to be pretty much focused on just doing this exercise. So hopefully by practicing this together, we'll continue to get better. And if you're not sure of something, just take a guess. I will, help you along the way. There are some ways to identify these if you're not sure, and so we'll do that together. And just remember, when we're looking at participles, I noted here to see if it's a participle, look to see if there's a subject or an article. If it has one of those, then it's not a participle. All right, it's something else. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, Paul, you're up at the top, so I'm going to start with you. I'll give you a minute just to read. We're just going to go one verse at a time. So if you want to read verse 3, and take a minute to do that, and then identify the connector words that you see. All right? So my suggestion is just, again, look for these common ones as you're going through the verse, and you'll probably capture most of them. So Paul, why don't you go ahead and get us started? You can read the verse and then just identify the positions you see, or the connector word you see.
We give thanks to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, praying always for you. So we give thanks to God. To is a preposition.
Good.
The Father of, which is another preposition.
All right, so I'll just put PR above it. Father of, yes, good, preposition.
Our Lord Jesus Christ, and praying is a participle.
Yes, and how do we know that?
It is praying without a subject.
Yes. And there's no article in front, so yes, it's a participle here. Okay, good. Can you do verse 4 as well?
there's one more, right? For you, right? So
Oh,
praying
I'm
always
sorry.
for
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I missed that.
So for is a uh, subordinate conjunction, right? Yeah. Oh,
Well,
it's a preposition as well.
it's
Yeah, for you.
preposition, and there's the biggest clue for you to know that is look at what follows it. If it's a noun, then it's a
For you.
preposition. If it's a
Okay.
clause, if you see a subject and a verb, then you have a conjunction.
Okay.
Yeah, and notice Paul points out here, notice we have under the conjunctions, there's a for. So for can be a conjunction, or notice it's also one of the common prepositions. So that can be confusing. Well, which one is it here? Well, on one side, at least we know it's a connector word. All right, so that's good. So at least we identify that. Now, how it's working in the sentence, that's where we need to look for, okay, what follows the word for? If it's a noun, it's functioning as a preposition. If there's a clause there, a subject and a verb, if he had been saying praying always for I love you or I care about you, well, now if he said that for I love you, if it's followed by a clause here, which it would be, right? Love is a verb, I is the subject, that would then mean for is a conjunction. Okay? But in this case, it's not followed by, it's just followed by the noun you. So it's a preposition. Now, why does that matter? Well, if you have a conjunction here, if it had said, for I love you, that would change the way this clause is functioning. Remember, a conjunction, in this case, it would be subordinating, right? Because it's not and boy. And boy is coordinating, and, nor, but, or, yet. All right. Those coordinate, those connect to two equal ideas or two grammatically equal statements. All right. Whether it's a word or a phrase or a clause. But a subordinating conjunction subordinates or puts under the word it modifies. All right. So in this case, praying always for I love you, that would tell us the reason he's praying. But again, Paul didn't write for I love you. He just said for you, which tells us this is a preposition, and therefore it's praying always. For you is who he's praying for. Okay. So that'll become, we'll see that the importance of this a little later, but I'm just pointing it out because this is very common. You're going to see the word for in English that shows up and can actually be a preposition or subordinating conjunction. Now in Greek, there's a particular Greek word that the word for that we know functions a particular way. It's just the problem in English because it's a word that's spelled exactly the same way. Another one issue we have is the word that here, where it can function like a relative pronoun, or it can function like a subordinating conjunction. So we'll have the same trouble there with the word that. All right, but everything else would be okay. So anyway, sorry, long explanation, but I just want you to be aware this word for pops up a lot. We're going to see this several times in this passage, where sometimes it will be acting like a preposition and other times like a conjunction. So the key is to just look for, is there a clause after the word? If there is, it's not a preposition. All right, any questions on that? Oh, this is too technical, too much technical grammar here. Yes, it is. But we must suffer, right? We must suffer for the Lord and do this grammar, and it will help us in the long run. Trust me. All right. Let's see, Paul. I think, yeah, you captured all of them in verse 3. If you wouldn't mind, could you also do verse 4?
All right. Since would be a subordinating conjunction.
Okay,
Since
good.
we have heard of. Of would be a preposition.
Okay, good.
Of your faith.
Of your faith, yes. All right.
In, another preposition. In Christ Jesus.
In Christ Jesus.
And a coordinating conjunction.
Yep. Part of and boy. Good.
Right. The love which, a relative pronoun.
Relative pronoun describing love. All right, good.
Which you have for, this would be a subordinate, this would be a preposition again, right?
Yes. Because notice what follows
All
it.
the saints.
Yeah.
All the saints is a noun. Yeah.
Yes. All right. There's no verb here. There's no subject. So it's a preposition. All right. Good. Any others? Oh, since let me. All right. Those are all the ones that I see.
Yep.
Great job. Okay. Zali, you're next on my screen. So I'm going to give you verse 5. So if you want to take a minute just to read it yourself and then read it for us and identify the connecting words.
Because of the hope laid up for you in heaven, of which you previously heard in the word of truth, the gospel. The first is of,
Okay.
that is preposition.
Yep. It's part of a with boot here, right?
Yeah.
Good.
And later for.
All right. What is this word? What kind of connector word is it? Just look at what follows. What do you see a verb after it?
You is I think kind of subject here.
Okay. What part of speech is you? Is it a noun? Is it an adjective? Is it a verb?
It's noun.
It's a noun. Okay, good. So if it's a noun that follows follows the word here, then it's a preposition. Okay.
Okay.
If it had been a verb, again, hope laid up. This would be hard to. If there was some verb after it, hope laid up for. I can't think of one that would fit here. Like in the previous, if there's just a noun, then it's going to be a preposition. If there's a verb here, then you need to think about it. Could be a conjunction, okay? But there's no verb after it, so it's just preposition.
Okay. And in is
Good.
preposition.
Preposition, very good. It's part of a with boot again.
And another of
Yep. Good.
is preposition.
Very good.
And which also relative pronoun.
Yes. Excellent. All right.
In the word, in is another preposition.
Yes. Okay.
And another one is the word of.
All right.
preposition.
Yes.
Well,
Okay, good. There's one more that I see here. It's right at the beginning. And
because
yes.
that is conjunction.
Yeah, do you see it up here?
Yep.
All right. Now let's notice something so far, just in these first few verses that we've done.
Right.
All of the words that have been identified are in this list up here. So far, 100%. All right. So I keep telling you this because I think it'll help you. The more you memorize the list that I've given you of these common words, the more you're going to catch. Now, praying, of course, is a participle, but that you can just notice with the verb plus ing, and there's no subject or article, okay? Those could be different. There's not like a list of common participles. But as far as the other connector words, this list that I gave you will really capture most of them. And so far, all of them have been from this list. Okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, Zali, good job. Can you do one more verse 6 for us?
Which has come to you, just as in all the world also it is, constantly bearing fruit and increasing, even as it has been doing in you also since the day you heard of it and understood the grace of God in truth, which is relative pronoun.
Okay. Oops. Which? Good. All right.
And come to is another preposition.
Yes. Good. Come to you.
And another one is in all the world.
Okay. And what is that?
Preposition.
Yes. Again, part of a with boot, that list. All right. Good.
Yep. And also, there is no also. Let me check.
Correct. Also is not a connector word.
No. So it is constantly bearing, I think, is a participle.
Okay. So bearing looks like a participle, right? It is has
Oh,
the
no,
yeah, okay, good. What do you
it's a
see?
verb because I see is before that.
Okay. Yeah. It is bearing. So
It is
it is
bearing.
the subject and is that helping verb that I mentioned to you last week. Very good observation. So I'll just put below it, there's a subject, it. So this is acting like a verb here. All right.
And
Okay, good. What is that?
conjunction
Good. And then we have the same thing with increasing, right?
it's a verb. Yeah.
It's a verb also. So I'm gonna I'm gonna put these tricky ones in green just to note that it looks like a participle, but here it's actually not a connector word. It's actually functioning like a verb, but I'm gonna highlight it just so we can draw our attention to it. So notice it has the subject,
It.
and then also that helping verb is. Okay, over here is, I'm going to highlight that too, just so you can, okay? Okay, good. Keep going, you're doing great.
And in, doing in you is preposition.
Yes. And then notice we have this
Doing.
doing, and it's the same thing. It has been doing. So this is also a verb here.
Oh, yeah.
I'll highlight it in green just for the same reason. The subject is it. All right.
Since.
Good. What is that?
Sin is conjunction.
Yeah. And notice it's up on our list here
Yep.
as well. It's a subordinating conjunction.
Yes. It and
Good.
Yep, is conjunction.
Oops, sorry. Yes, conjunction. Good.
Understood the grace of God in truth. Another preposition in.
All right. Conjunction, grace of God,
Conjunction
preposition.
of.
Yep, of there too.
Preposition.
All right. Very good. Very good. Now, there is one other that snuck in here that's not on our list. So once in a while, we will see this. It's a conjunction. Does anybody see it there in verse 6? There's one more conjunction here.
Is it just as?
Yes. Just as. All right. So this one, it's not on our list because it's not as common, but snuck in there. But again, that's the first one now that's not on our list that is here. So once in a while we'll have that. But if you remember all the words in our list here, you'll be in good shape. All right. That's all I see. Does anybody see any others? I think Zali got
Even as.
Even as.
Even as.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yep. Same thing. Just as, even as. That's again a conjunction here. All right, good.
Another
Okay.
preposition. You heard of it.
Yeah, technically that is a preposition. In English, there's these, again, English has some challenges. In English, there are sometimes verbs that have a preposition as part of the verb. This is one of those examples. Heard of. In English, you say those two words together. Sometimes it should say since the day you heard it. But in English, sometimes a preposition will find its way. This is called a prepositional verb. All right. We're not going to go into that. That'll be.
By the way.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can I ask Pastor Tim before we get long, Father? And yeah, since the day you heard of it, yeah, we can simply say that since the day you heard it, right? So
Yeah.
what is the significance of? Why is it difference, or it is any makes difference, or what? Why is there of, preposition of?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is an English issue. In English, there are what are called prepositional verbs. These are idioms, really, that contain a verb plus a preposition after the verb. I know of that man. All right. That's just in English a way that sometimes you might express a verbal idea. I just think it's confusing. You could say, I know that man, but sometimes you might see this. Now, in this case, notice something, guys. I don't know that if we've talked about this yet. Do you see here how it's the words of it are in italics? You guys see that? The font is different. Some English translations will, here, let me show you this directly. Some English translations will actually, sometimes they will add in words in order to make the, make it flow more easily, make it easier to read. So let me show this to you. Can you see my Bible software on your screen? I have my Logos opened. Okay, now notice here, there are sometimes words that are italicized. All right, can anybody see some in the first few verses there? This is Colossians 1. I just have the text here. Anyone see words that are put in italics?
Who are?
Who are?
Verse 2.
Who are? Now, why is that? Why did they put those in italics and not the rest? Well, the New American Standard is one translation that will do this, where the New American Standard will put words in italics that they added. Okay, these are, who are is not in the original Greek over here. All right. It is put there to help make it easier to read. Now, just I want to mention, even though that's not in the Greek text, that doesn't mean they're adding to the Bible. Okay, what they're trying to do is give a translation that makes sense to the reader. Literally, the Greek says, "To the saints and faithful brethren in Christ at Colossae." All right, if we were to read the Greek text over here, that's what it would be literally. "To the saints and faithful brethren in Christ at Colossae." The New American Standard added "who are" there in order to make it easier to read. All right. But what I like about the New American Standard is it tells you when it does that. Most translations don't. For example, if we look at the ESV, "To the saints and faithful brothers in Christ," and notice they just put "at Colossae." They didn't add the "who are." All right. If we look at other translations, I don't know if it'll, oh, it won't. Okay. Now, what I like about the New American Standard is it just tells you when it adds something in like that, and it tells you with the italics. I usually just ignore anything that's italicized, put in italics, I ignore, because it's not actually in the original. For example, let's go down to verse 6. Do you guys see any italic words in italics there?
Has been doing.
Yeah. Even at it has been doing in you. Now that, again, that clause is not in the original Greek over here. But the idea is there. It's just not there explicitly or literally. So if we had read this literally, it would be, "which has come to you, just as in all the world also, it is constantly bearing fruit and increasing, even as in you, since the day you heard of it." So literally, it would be just "even as in you." Well, the idea is "even as it has been doing in you." All right, so they added in this clause just to make it more clear, the translation. All right, but literally, you can read it, "bearing fruit and increasing, even as in you." All right, well, even as what? Even as it's been doing in you. Let's see what the English Standard Version did with verse 6. "Which has come to you, as indeed the whole world it is bearing fruit and increasing, as it also does among you." So they added the same thing. "It also does." but they didn't tell you they added it. There's no italics there. All right. It is a faithful translation. There's nothing wrong with this, but what it is just the idea of they're trying to convey the idea, adding a few more words to communicate that idea. And that's what is implied in the original Greek. It's just these words it has been doing is not in the Greek text. Okay, notice, and I brought this up because notice also of it is in italics here. Since the day you heard of it. So literally it's since the day you heard and understood the grace of God and truth. Okay, so when I see these, I ignore them because they're not in the original Greek, and so I just overlook them when I'm doing the diagramming. All right, I'll put them in the diagram, but then I recognize these are just added by the translators to try to help it be clearer. But often you can see you don't need it. Since the day you heard and understood. Okay, that makes sense. So, but they added of it just to make it clear. And what they did is they made this verb heard into this prepositional verb for heard of. All right, I don't know if that was confusing or helpful. Any questions on what we just talked about? These words that are in italics. Again, this is something the New American Standard does. I think the New King James does it also. They will put words that they added in italics. We'll see this again in verse 9. Since the day we heard, and then notice of it. So, and notice verse 10. So that you will walk in a manner worthy of the Lord to please, and then notice him was added here. All right, Paul didn't put him in the original, but that's the idea though, right? To please who? The Lord. That's implied in the passage. They just wrote it out explicitly to make it clear to the reader, but in the original Greek, Paul did not add that pronoun him. He just said, literally, I think, unto all pleasing. All right, but in English, that's a little harder to understand. So they put to please him in order to make it a little more clear when you read it. Any questions on that?
Thank you so much.
Okay. I don't want you to think the New American Standard is trying to add to the Bible by doing this. What they're trying to do, as with any translation, sometimes you need to add more words to make it clear. So in those words, you're still bringing the sense of the text, but sometimes more words are needed in your translation in order to make it more clear. So the New American Standard, what I really like about it is it will put in, anytime it does that, it says, okay, here, we've added these words in it just to make it easier to read, but they're telling you that the words are added. Another thing that I really like about the New American Standard, we saw it down here in verse 10, is they will sometimes, they'll put a footnote here. You guys see that? Unto all pleasing. And they'll tell you literally, this is a participle, unto all pleasing. But they translated it as to please him, because that's a little easier to understand in English. But they tell you what the literal word is by putting a footnote there. Okay, so they, let's see what they do with increasing. Okay. Or they'll sometimes give an alternate translation. Okay, and they'll put that in here by, notice the word or. All right. So sometimes they'll say, if you see an LIT in the footnote, that means literally it's this statement. All right. Or sometimes they'll put the word or and then give you an alternate translation. We see it again in verse 12. Notice, who has qualified us to share. Let's see what the footnote says. Okay, here again, literally. Who has qualified us unto the portion of the inheritance. Well, that's a little bit harder to understand. And so what they did is they translated it as to share. But they tell you what they did. All right, let's look at, there's a footnote under saints. Okay, another translation could be or holy ones. All right, so this is why I like to use the New American Standard, because they will tell you when there are some differences. All right, they'll tell you when they translate something they'll give you the literal translation, and they'll tell you, well, we translated it this way to make it easier to read. All right, so look for, if you're using the New American Standard, look for those footnotes and look for the italicized words. All right, now the ESV, which is an excellent translation, but they don't always do that. They won't show you words that they added. They won't show italics. Sometimes, though, they will give you footnotes. Okay, in this case, giving thanks, they give an alternate translation there. All right, let's see you. Okay, well, let's get back to, are there any questions on that? Hopefully that makes sense. We just have to remember, guys, translations are that. They're a translation. They're not the original. And so there's always going to be some challenges. As you know, you speak more than one language, so you know there are challenges in communicating an idea from one language to another. And so these Bible translations we have, these English translations, are excellent translations, but you cannot get a perfect match between the original and the translation. And so what they try to do is they'll add a few words or modify how it's translated just to make it more clear. But the New American Standard will tell us when they do something that's significantly different. All right, so that we can be aware of that. But it does a great job translating. It's just we recognize sometimes you can't get an exact translation. All right, so that's one of the things that we need to be aware of. So by doing this study and being very observant, remember early on we talked about being good at observing. One of the things you need to observe is, for example, do you see any words in italics? Or do you see any footnotes next to a word? All right. Those are going to be additional clues that give you insight into the passage. All right. So that's a helpful feature of the New American Standard version. All right. Questions or comments before we move on to verse 7? And this, what started this was a very good question on this heard of. And as I said, that there's prepositional verbs. In fact, I gave you a link in the last set of notes. I gave you two web addresses that discuss these prepositional verbs. So if you want to get into that and look at those, I chose not to go through them in class because we only have a limited, we could spend a year on English grammar, all right? But I know that nobody will be left in the class if we did that, all right? So I love you guys. I don't want to see you go. So we're only doing the amount of grammar that I think we need to be able to be more effective. In the future, I do advanced discussions on grammar. I'm doing that with a group of men who've already gone through this program. And we've been spending time going through advanced grammar with them. I've even done a little bit of Greek with them as well. But right now we need to just get the basics, and then we can add to that in the future. But I'm just making you aware there are words in English that like this. Now, what I've noticed is the ESV translation doesn't use these prepositional verbs, these idioms. In fact, let me see. Let's look and see how the ESV translated this verse. Verse 8, or sorry, verse 6. Okay, so the New American Standard has the day you heard of it. Let's see what the ESV did. Verse 6. Notice, since the day you heard it, there's no heard of. You see that? What I've noticed is the ESV does not use these English idioms, these prepositional verbs. They just translate it more directly. Verse 10, I think, was another one. Was it 10? Oh, sorry, verse 9. From the day we heard. Now, in the New American Standard, it has since the day we heard of it. All right, it added it in again there. But the English Standard Version just has from the day we heard. So it's a little more, it's more literal, which is good here in this case. All right. So if you use the ESV, you probably won't see these odd prepositional verbs. If you use the New American Standard, you will. Okay, well, what does that mean in regards to identifying these connector words? What that means is technically the word of here, it is a preposition, but it's not acting like one here. It's actually part of this verb heard of. All right. Now, it's okay, though, if you didn't know that or didn't catch it, it's okay. If you just identified this as a preposition, that's fine. All right. There's not going to be that many of these, so it'll be okay. All right. Enough of that. Let's get back to Colossians 1. Okay. Where are we? Tunging, can you do verse 7 for us?
Verse 7.
Yeah, and you can take a moment.
Just
read it.
as.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead and read the verse, and then you can go back and identify the connector words.
Yeah. Just as is conjunctions.
Yes, we saw that just a moment ago in the previous verse. Good. Subordinating conjunction. All right.
Yes. And yes, you learn it from. From is preposition.
Good.
Preposition.
And notice, by the way, you see the it there is italicized. So it's just something that New American Standard added. Just FYI. Okay, sorry, keep going.
And our beloved fellow born servant who is like relative pronouns.
Very good. Yes.
Gift pronouns is a faithful servant of is preposition
Yes.
and on our behalf and on preposition.
All right, good. Oh, that's verse 7. Sorry, can you keep going, verse 8?
Yeah. Yes. And he also informs, so and the word and is conjunction, and he also inform us of preposition, the love in the spirit, in it's a
Good.
preposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. Anybody see any others in verses 7 and 8? I think you got them all. Looks like it. Good. Very good. All right. Joshua. I'm going to give you the next couple verses here.
Sure. 4
Okay.
is conjunction.
And how do you know that?
It's followed by a clause.
Okay. If we look, what would be the clause here?
This reason also. Uh,
Yeah. I gave you this one. Technically, I mean, notice what is it? Okay, for this reason. Also, do you see a verb here?
no.
No, so it looks like it's actually functioning like a preposition, right? Because reason is a noun.
Okay.
All right. So literally, it's we have not ceased to pray for you for this reason. So and that so for actually is acting like a preposition here.
All right.
All right.
Since
All right. Since.
conjunction.
Yes. Good.
Okay, another word of it that we have talked about. Prepositional verb.
Yeah. Prepositional verb. And again, notice it's italicized here. So it's literally since the day we heard.
To cease to pray. To preposition.
Okay.
For preposition. To ask. To preposition. That relative pronoun.
Okay. Can look
Yeah.
like that. We'll come back and talk about that in a minute.
With preposition.
Okay. Good.
of preposition in all spiritual wisdom in preposition.
Okay.
Yep, that's all for verse 9.
All right. Couple of things here. I do see one more.
Okay. And sorry, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Wisdom and understanding.
Okay. Now,
Conjunction.
conjunction. Let's talk about a couple things here. To pray. What do we
Oh,
notice
yeah.
here about this? To is a preposition, but
Yeah,
what follows
this
that word to? What kind of
verb.
word?
So,
Pray.
yeah, it's a verb. So it's an infinitive.
It's an infinitive. Okay, remember, guys, we talked about infinitives are to and then plus a verb. All right. Again, remember, prepositions are almost always followed by a noun. So to pray actually is an infinitive. All right. It's not. And why does that matter? It's not a connector word. Infinitives do not connect. They function either as a noun or an adjective or an adverb, but they don't connect phrases and clauses. They're a part of a phrase or a clause. Okay. So keep an eye on that. Whenever you see the preposition to, you're going to have to look at the word after it and see if it's a verb. So notice also to ask.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Infinitive. Yep.
You're going, oh man, this English is horrible. What, I gotta remember all this stuff. Well, honestly, in Greek there are infinitives also. All right, so it's not just an English thing. However, in Greek, it doesn't look like a preposition. All right, the Greek infinitive has a certain, the word has a certain ending that tells you it's an infinitive. So it's easier in Greek to spot these. English, it's harder because that word to there, that preposition to is part of it. So that sort of can be tricky. The way you confirm if it's a preposition is just look at the word that follows it. Okay, if it's a verb and it's the preposition to, then you have an infinitive. All right. So again, I'm sorry, there's all these special cases, and I think you just have to be aware of it. That's why we're practicing it. You know, after a while, you'll just see, okay, I see the preposition to, but oh, wait a minute, that's a verb. Okay, this is not a connector word. This is an infinitive. Okay, this is a different kind of part of speech there. Okay. And again, I highlighted it in green just to show that it looks like one of our connector words, but it's actually something else. And then the other thing you notice, to ask that you may be filled. Okay. As I mentioned before, sometimes the word that has different ways that it functions. It can be a relative pronoun. It can be also a subordinating conjunction. It can function like a demonstrative pronoun. Demonstrative pronoun. Bring me that book. Okay. Or it can function, it can introduce a direct object. All right. And that comes with like, I said that you could come. All right. Here, the word that is not a connector word. It's actually introducing the direct object, what I said. And here it is doing the same thing. To ask what? That you may be filled. So here it's acting like a direct object. It's telling us this infinitive, it's completing the idea. To ask what? To ask that you may be filled. So it's not a connector word in this case. All right. That's a little tricky. So like I said, whenever you see the word for or the word that, you've got to stop a minute and think a little bit. All right. Because it's not just going to, there's different possibilities with it. All right. Now, if you miss that and you just saw the word that and said, okay, that's a connector word, it's okay. All right. Well, we're going to have times where you may incorrectly identify a particular word. All right. That won't destroy everything in your diagram, but with practice, as I said, and seeing these things, you'll become more familiar with it. And in this case, you can just ask yourself, okay, what is the word that doing here? Well, it is following this infinitive to ask. Now, sometimes what I'll do is take the word out and just see, okay, what if the word wasn't there? Would this make sense? To ask you may be filled. Okay, it makes more sense when you put the word that back in here. It's telling us the content of what's being asked. To ask that you may be filled. Okay, you may be filled is what he is asking. All right, now if that doesn't make sense, that's okay. We're going to see some more examples of that as we go forward together. All right. Joshua, any questions on that? Does that make sense
Nope.
to you?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that was a tough
That's
verse.
another conjunction there.
What's that?
That's another conjunction in between there. You and to ox. And
Oh, do we miss? Thank you. We missed one. Good job. All right. So there's another conjunction there from Anboy. All right. Go to verse
Pastor
10.
Tim,
Yes.
I have the question on that verse 9. Since the day,
Yes.
about the since the day, this fragment, is this since the day, since connected the day, or since we heard?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. How would that work here? Since is introducing this entire clause, or it's connecting this entire clause here to ceased. We have not ceased since the day we heard of it. Let's see. How would that be functioning here? Your question is specifically, how is this the day working here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost the idea of let me see.
Isn't since we heard the main idea, because it really, the day doesn't real. I mean, just adds a supporting detail, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
when we do the diagramming, how do we put it on the level? Because we need to diagram it on the level, right?
yeah, I'll show you that in a minute here. Okay. From which day? Still not. Yeah, how we would diagram this is as follows.
We have the same trouble on from verse 6 also,
Yes, it's the same.
or verse 7 maybe.
Yeah, verse 6 right here. It's the same phrase. Since the day, in this case, you heard of it. Literally, it's from which day you heard.
I saw this from ESV. It is from, but here since, yeah, this is another case.
Yeah, from is actually more literal. The Greek is actually a preposition from. And here's the idea, I think, that's trying to be expressed, and it's a little bit harder to do it. Let's see, let me put an insert in here.
Does it has any historical perspective?
What do you mean by that?
That means it is because this is Old English.
Yeah, that could be. Okay, literally, I think, and this is the ESV has this, is literally from the day you heard. It's a preposition in the Greek. And the idea being expressed, I'll just put it this way, is this. From the day which you heard. Okay, so it's focused on the day. So it's it has been doing in you from the day which you heard. So it's which day, the day which you heard. But that word which is not, it is in the Greek text. So I think this is the idea being expressed in the original. But the English translation kind of made it a little more confusing. So this is what I would do with it. You asked about the diagram. Let's do the one down here, because that was the original question. Was it verse 9? Yeah. For this reason also, since the day we heard of it, we have not ceased to pray for you. So this is what... Give me a minute, guys. Okay, so for this... All right, the main sentence, we heard of it. When did we heard of it? All right, since the day.
Yep.
Sorry. We have not ceased. Sorry, I misspoke. All right, we have not ceased. That's the main sentence. We have not ceased. When have we not ceased? Since the day we heard of it. So this is answering the question, when we have not ceased. Okay, so it's modifying this verb.
This reason, since the day we heard of it, when we have not ceased.
All right, so this is telling you a time, right? This clause. Since the day we heard of it. So it's telling you when. It's answering the question when. That's why it's modifying a verb. All right, if a phrase or clause answers the question when, it's modifying an action. It's telling you when that action happened. So if we took the more literal, I think a better translation or more literal translation would be this. From the day which you heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, etc. All right. And here we would have this from the day, because it's describing when, and which day, the day which you heard. All right. So
Yep.
when we have not ceased is from the day. And then which day is being covered by this relative clause here. So this would be the most accurate way to diagram that. But the meaning or the idea of it is, since the day we heard of it, this is expressing an idea of a time, right?
Yep.
So at least if you aren't clear on how it would be diagrammed or connect, you at least know that this is answering the question when something happened, and therefore it's going to modify an action. And in this case, the action is we've not ceased to pray. Okay, I don't know if that helped or not. That's actually a difficult, what we're encountering here is a difficult translation. All right, the ESV did, I think, a better job when it said, from the day we heard. All right, so your initial thought was actually correct in that it is from the day. Now the NAS put since the day, so that made it a little more confusing, but it still contains that idea of a time. From the day, since the day. In English, that carries the same idea, even though since is a conjunction and from is a preposition. It's still the same meaning is conveyed in that. All right, that's getting pretty technical. Are there any further questions on that? Does that make sense, or you want to just throw something at the wall?
No, I just need to make sure whether this was a since, if it is not act like the conjunction, will it still be the main idea?
Yeah, the main idea is we have not ceased to pray. That's the main action. Since the day we heard of it is a supporting or subordinate thought that modifies that action. Okay? And again, the key is being able to see that it's answering the question when. All right? If a phrase or clause answers the question when, why, where, or how, then it will modify a verb, or I should say this, an action. Okay? So we're always going to be asking ourselves, what question is this phrase or clause answering? And if it's telling us when, or where, or why, or how, then that is going to be modifying an action. That's describing an action.
Yeah.
If a phrase or clause answers the question, what kind, which one, who, that's going to be modifies a noun. So for example, here, from the day which we heard, that's describing the day. It's identifying or specifying the particular day. Which day? The day which we heard. All right, so that's why it's modifying day, which is a noun. But from the day is answering question when something happens. So that's why it's modifying the verb ceased.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. That's a really good question. And it's sort of it reveals the challenge that we have with this at times. At some point too, down the road, when we get more skilled at doing these diagrams, I will show you a very helpful tool. Some of you may already be familiar with it, the Interlinear. It's basically a reference where the original Greek text is given, and then the literal translation is also included in that, and you can see some of these things. Maybe I'll just show you for an example. If you're already confused, I'll just make you more confused, all right? Let's just go all the way here. I'm going to do it the whole thing. Let's get really, really confused. Then you'll be asking, why did I stay up tonight to listen to this? This is, okay. Let me show you something. Here it is. Okay. My favorite interlinear, the one I use quite often, it's very good, is on BibleHub.com. Okay. Bookmark this website, BibleHub.com. It's a really helpful one. All right. This will open up to you a whole world of resources to be able to look at a passage. All right. And it's a free online website. All right. So let me just show you. We'll go to Colossians 1. So I type in the passage, Colossians 1. And then, okay, there's all kinds of stuff here. What I want to focus on is what's called here interlin. Okay, you see that? Interlin is short for interlinear, meaning between lines. And I'll show you why that is. Notice here, okay, this is Colossians 1. All right, I'm going to click for the whole chapter. I want to see the interlinear for the whole chapter. We're going to use this later when we do word studies. All right, so this is just, we're jumping ahead a little bit. So I'm giving you in advance some Unit 3 material. All right, so for showing up tonight, you're actually getting some bonus material ahead. You're going to be ahead of everybody else, okay? So, because we're going to use this for our word study. Let's go to Colossians 1. I think it was verse 9 that our brother pointed out. Okay. On the interlinear, there's several things going on here. Notice, okay, here's verse 9 for Colossians 1. And in the middle, in the black font, is the actual Greek text. Okay? Diatuto, kai hemes, aphes, hemeros, ekusamen. All right? Now, so that's the actual Greek text. Right below it is the literal English translation. So basically, their dictionary definition of the word. All right? It's like the most literal. It's not always the most clear, but they'll put a literal translation under it. Okay? Because of this, also we from the day we heard. All right? That's just taking that one Greek word and giving you the dictionary definition that that they think. Now, again, this is also a translation, by the way. It's their it's the word, a translation for the word that they think it is. Okay. So
Dia.
that's below it in red. Now, above it in blue is kind of the English way to pronounce the Greek word.
Okay. Amaze.
Okay.
Face.
Right? Dia,
Cameras.
tokai. Okay. So that's just giving you, if you want to pronounce it. And above that, and here's what we're going to look at when we do word studies. See that number there? There's numbers above these words. Those are referring to what's called the Strong's number. And when you click on that number, look what happens. Whoa, look at all this. All right, this is all helpful stuff we're going to do for word studies. It gives definitions, other verses where the word is used, but we're going to skip that. I'm just showing you what's here. That'll be for the future. All right. Let's go back to, all right, so that's the number at the top. That's kind of going to be our guide when we do word studies. Now, at the very bottom, the 5th row, is the part of speech. Okay, so this word dia is actually a preposition, which can be translated because of or from. All right. And so what this interlinear shows us is actually what is there in the original Greek text, and it gives us some insight as to the kinds of words. So literally, it is because of this or from this. Also we, from the day, there it is. All right, preposition, from the day, or really which day we heard. All right, we'll refer to this later on. I usually don't introduce this right away because it's just so much information, but I at least want you to be aware. There's a really helpful resource called an Interlinear, which can give us some insight into the way a particular clause or phrase is translated. Okay? But don't worry too much about this now. We'll come back to it later as a resource and a guide that'll help us. Okay, but no, I just want you to see there's different, it identifies prepositions, conjunctions, and notice here even a participle, that word praying. Okay. See anything else I want to. Okay, so again, that's BibleHub.com. All right, and at the top there are different options of things to look at. The Interlinear is the one I was showing you, but you can look up, there's lexicon, there's other sermons, there's a lot of helpful resources on this website. Okay? All right. Let's get back to identifying these connector words. All right, I want to get through a few more verses together. Okay. All right. Let's see. Pastor Dwayne, you look like you really want to do some connector words. So I'm going to give you a chance here. If you could do verse 10 for us.
Just one verse. All right, let's see. There's got to be some prepositions here. So let's see. I see in, walk in. That's
Okay.
a preposition.
Good.
And then you have of the Lord. That's another preposition. Of the Lord. Of.
Okay.
And to please would be to, I think, is a preposition, isn't it?
Okay. Well, let's look at, again, what follows it.
Oh, another word. Please. Oh, wait, this is another one of those infinitive.
Yes.
What,
Good. Good catch.
please. Is that a state of being, huh?
Well,
Please.
please is a verb, right? So please is a verb here. So yeah, this is actually an infinitive.
Okay, infinitive. All right.
So it's
And
one
then
of those,
in-
again, it's not a connector word. That's why we're identifying it, because to would be by itself as a preposition, but to please is a infinitive. So
Okay, in all that
okay,
in.
good.
another
In.
preposition. Oh my! Then we have a preposition. What do you call that? Participle. Is that bearing?
Yes.
Group?
Okay.
Participle. And then in
Let's-
is another preposition.
Okay. In. Good.
Let's see. Oh, and that would be a correlating connector word. And
Yep, a coordinating conjunction. That's the specific.
that's the word, conjunction. And then we had another in the knowledge.
Yep, preposition.
Yeah, preposition of would be of God. That's another one follows by a noun. All right, now let's see, what am I missing? Oh dear. So that's something really important here. Let me see. I had it written here. So that somewhere.
It is a connector word in this case. Now take a look. If we go up to our list of the common, you'll see it up here on our list of the common connector words.
Yeah, I remember seeing it somewhere. So that, where did that fall in? Oh yeah, there it is under flabets.
Yeah.
Fabots. Yeah, that's a subjective conjunction. Yeah, so
Yes,
that.
good. Subordinating conjunction in this case.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll put CO for conjunction up here. All right, good. Any others?
No, I don't see any of that. Oh, wait, increasing, would that
Yes.
be, that's, what do you call that? Infinitive, huh? No, relative pronoun. No, ing, that's, oh, I don't know here.
Yep.
Yeah,
You're on the right
Participle.
track.
participle. ING,
Yeah. Participle, good. Now,
I got so many notes.
yeah, I know. Couple things here then on those participles, we just want to confirm that it is one by looking for, is there a subject for this participle? We don't see one, and there's no
Okay.
article. All right, so it looks like it is, these are participles here in this case. All right, so good catch. Any others? I think you got everything on that one.
Yeah, it's, a participle modifies a verb or a noun. So increasing, it'd be knowledge, huh?
Yeah,
It'd be
we
a
can.
noun.
Well, we can diagram this.
Or you don't have to diagram, it takes a lot of time. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, eventually that's what we want to do here, but let's go ahead and, I mean, that's why we're identifying connector words, is so that eventually we can diagram it, but let's just do that for this. Okay, so that's going to connect to something above. You will walk, and then we break it at every connector word. So in a manner worthy of the Lord. Okay, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work. Oops. And again, what we do is just break it at every, in the knowledge of God. All right. So that would be our second step in the diagram. You will walk, and then this phrase in a manner worthy is answering the question how you will walk. So it's going to modify the action. It's describing how the action is being done in a manner worthy. What Worthy of the Lord. That's modifying worthy. What kind of worthy? All right.
Yeah.
Now, to
Enter-
please him,
It's the Lord.
also describing how, or maybe actually, sorry, why, the purpose. To walk in a manner worthy. The purpose is why? Why are we doing that? To please him. Oh, trying to. In all respects. That's how. Describes how we please him. Bearing fruit. Okay, and that's now we just decide, okay, where does that go? Well, it's gonna, like you just said, Dwayne, a participle modifies a noun or a verb. And here we just have to ask, okay, what is it describing here? I think it's modifying walk. It's describing how. How would you walk? Well, what will you see? Bearing fruit. Where? Where am I bearing fruit? In every good work and increasing. Okay, again, that's also how I will walk in the knowledge. What kind of knowledge of God? All right.
Yay.
So here's what's interesting. It's a description, 3 of these, in a manner worthy, bearing fruit, increasing, all are answering the question how. They're describing how you walk. And then inserted in that is to please him. Why? All right, so these would be 4 characteristics or of descriptions of how
Pleasing him.
of walk, of
Yeah.
how you walk, or something to that effect. But these are each modifying the action. The action here, this is the main idea. You will walk. How? In a manner worthy. How? Bearing fruit. How? Increasing. Why? To please him. Okay? And then you have these additional phrases that sort of modify a little further. But that's where, notice, we break it at each of the connector words. They separate the phrases and clauses that we will then come back and figure out, okay, what is that word modifying? And this is where we're going to spend the next couple of sessions in Unit 3. We'll go through how I did that in more detail. Right now, we're just trying to understand the building blocks that are going to get us there. That is identifying these connector words here, identifying the connector words, because those are what's going to separate those phrases and clauses that we will then decide, okay, where does this phrase or clause go? What is it modifying? What is it connected to? And how is it connected? And that's what the diagram ends up showing us. Okay. All right. Well, we jumped ahead a little bit there, but that was another, that verse was another challenging verse. So good job, Dwayne, for that, on doing that one. That was verse 10.
Pleasing.
Verse 10. Let's see. Where do I put this? Let me move this diagram so we can reconnect back up with, I'll put it, where to stick it here. Let's do this. All right. Philip, I'm going to, if your signal's okay, I'm going to ask you to do verse 11. Pastor Philip, would you, if you can hear us okay, can you try verse 11?
Sure. Can you hear me,
Yes.
Pastor? Yeah. Verse 11. Strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience joyously. Yeah, in verse 11, with
Sorry, let me trying to think. Okay, I'll just do this. Okay, with, sorry. What is that? What is with?
with with is preposition.
Yes, good.
According to is another conjunction, I think. Oh,
According
to,
to.
or maybe preposition.
Yeah, it's a preposition, actually.
Yeah.
It's not on our list of the most common, but it is a preposition.
For is also preposition.
Yes, good.
Of is another preposition.
Good.
And is conjunction, coordinated conjunction.
Good. Any others? What about this word attaining?
Oh, attaining. I
Is-
think it's gerund. Is it
Yeah,
gerund?
it looks like a participle, right? You have attain and then ing, but what is in front of it?
Article, the.
Yeah, see the article the? So this one, I'll put it in green because it looks like a participle, but actually, note the article, okay? And yeah, it's actually called in English, we call this a gerund. All right, you don't have to know that right now, but just to make you aware. But yeah, the key is that word the in front. That tells us that an article only modifies a noun. Okay? So that's why we know attaining here is acting like a noun because there's an article. It's not acting like a participle that will modify another word. Okay? Good job. Now, there is one more here to consider. That word strengthened.
Strengthened.
All right. And I was trying to combine it back with the previous verse because so you could see if there is a subject connected to it. And if you look, it actually, there's no subject here. So this word strengthen is a participle. And it is, again, connected to this string of what we just diagrammed. So actually there's another participle here, strengthened. And it appears again probably to be answering the question how we will walk. How do we walk? By being strengthened with all power. All right. And by the way, let me just give you this bonus here, guys. You might look at this list and go, okay, there doesn't seem to be, this word to please is kind of odd here because you've got participle after it, another participle after it, and another participle after it. Well, let me show you something. If we go to the interlinear, like we just talked about, We go to verse, what is that, 10?
Yes.
All right, let's look at this a minute. Where is it? Okay, if we look at verse 11, I'm sorry. With all power, and then notice this word being strengthened. Do you guys see that? We can confirm if you're not sure, okay, is this a participle or not? You can actually go to the interlinear and it will tell you. Can you guys see there? On the bottom, I've highlighted the it's describing what that word is. It's parsing that word for us. Do you guys see it says verb? And then it says present participle. So it is a participle in Greek. So that'll just be a way to confirm. All right. Now, again, if you're not following this interlinear, don't worry about it now. But I just want you to see that there's a way to check some of these things. If you're not sure, you can actually go to the interlinear and it will tell you that it's a participle. It's the same for bearing fruit. Notice present participle. And then growing. Tells us, again, participle. So that's a way to identify that. All right, that's extra stuff. For now, what we can do is just when we look at the word in the text, the English word, we can just ask ourselves, okay, is there a subject or is there an article? And in this case with strengthen, there is not. So that is a participle with that ed ending. All right. Pastor Philip, if you don't mind, can you also then do verse 12?
Yes. And giving is another participle, I think.
Yes, you're correct. No subject and there's no article.
No article. And true is preposition.
Yes.
Who is a relative pronoun.
Very good. RP.
Qualify us to share. I think to share is infinitive.
Yeah, because share is a verb, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, this is actually to share. It's to plus the verb. So that's an infinitive. It's not a preposition. All right.
And in is another preposition here.
Good.
In the inheritance of the saints. Of is another preposition.
Good.
The saints. In is another preposition.
Again, part of a whiff boot, part of those most common.
Yes.
All right. Good. Notice now we have another participle that's going to connect with this you will walk. Okay? Giving thanks to the Father. So this you will walk command or statement here, clause, has a number of phrases and clauses modifying it. Okay, Paul gives a lot of description here to how and why you will walk. Okay, again, joyously giving thanks is another way that we walk from this passage. All right, well, I think that's enough grammar pain and suffering that I should cause you this evening. What I will do is I will post, I have here, let me just show you. The result, this is my, I went through the whole Colossians 1 and identified the connector words for you. All right. And then if it's in green, that means it looks like a connector word, but it's actually something else. Okay. And I give you some information there. All right. So you can, what I would suggest you do if you want to get the most out of this is before you look at what I did, do yourself go through, and if you've done the assignments, you'll have already done this, but I would encourage you just go through and do the assignments. They're in 3 parts here. One assignment looks at conjunctions, another at prepositions, and then assignment 5 looks at the pronouns and participles. Do those, and then come back and look at what I had, and you can compare. I may have missed some here. I think I got all of them, but it's very possible that I missed some. But for the most part, you can compare and see what I put and what you had. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me. But here it is, the whole chapter of Colossians 1, where we've identified the connector words. And once we've done that, now we're actually ready to diagram this chapter. And when we start off unit 3, or the first session, we will go to that next step and actually do the diagram. All right, we'll spend our first couple weeks doing that, which brings me to our schedule. Next week is discipleship lab, so we'll take a break from class next week. And then the week following, actually, I need to postpone the class. My father is coming to visit me, and so I will not be available that next week. So next Tuesday, June 1st, will be discipleship lab. June 8th, there will be no class because of, sorry. Let's see, June 8th. Actually, we can have class June 8th. It's June 15th that will not have class. So June 1st is D-Lab. June 8th is we'll have session 1 of Unit 3, and then June 15, I will need to cancel class that week. Okay, so next week, Discipleship Lab, you can meet with Pastor Joshua or Pastor Philip for prayer accountability, and then June 8th, we'll be back together for the first session of Unit 3, and that means we'll be more than halfway through this first module, okay? All right, well, thank you for your patience, your diligence, brothers. I know this is, challenging. There's a lot of challenging aspects here to this. And my hope is just as we work through examples together, you'll get more familiar, more comfortable, more confident, and then be able to do the diagram. And as I said, what you're going to find if you stay with this is it will really change how you listen to sermons, even not just how you study and preach them. You'll be looking for things that normally you wouldn't look for, but you'll be asking, okay, I see this phrase. What's it modifying here? Oh, and then as the sermon's being preached, you'll be looking for things that will help you better understand. If it's an expository sermon, if the preacher is explaining the passage, this will help you in that, believe me. So the Lord will reward your faithfulness and diligence. Just stay with it. If you're struggling, ask the Lord for help. Ask me questions. Anytime, I'd be happy to answer them. You can message me or anything that will help. Okay, so thank you again for giving part of your evening for this. Are there any final comments or questions that you brothers have before we finish? Okay. Pastor Dwayne, would you mind closing us in prayer?
Father, we rejoice that you are our Father and that, Lord, you do take care and you bring these experiences